Welcome. Good evening, everyone, to the August 3rd, 2022 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. I'm Joanne Crowley, Chair, as this is a hybrid meeting involving both in-person and remote participants. I'll read the following statement into the record. This is to formally advise that as required by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, paragraphs 18 to 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16th, 2021. The Yarmouth Planning Board will hold a public meeting on Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. in the hearing room. Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, Mass. 02664. Public is welcome to attend via remote access provided on the meeting agenda posted on the town website under the agendas and minutes tabs by selecting Planning Board. I'll begin by taking roll call. Brad Goodwin,
Present.
Susan Britta,
Present.
Will Rubenstein,
Present.
Chris Vincent, Jim Saban,
Present.
Joanne Crowley, present. Seeing that we have a quorum, I will now call the meeting to order. For remote public participation during the public comment period for these public hearings or at my discretion during this meeting, I will invite the audience to comment. Online audience members can use the raise hand button to notify me. Dial-in audience members should press *9 on their phones. All audience members will be muted until you're recognized by me to participate. Once recognized, audience members are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record. And will you please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands,
one nation.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on our agenda this evening is a continuation of the public hearings from May 18th, June 15th, and July 6th, 2022 for definitive subdivision number 2936 and special permit number 116. I would now like to continue these concurrent public hearings on both of these requests and to welcome the residents of Yarmouth who may be joining us remotely. And I would also welcome the representative for the applicant, Attorney Paul Tardif. You will recall that the owner of this property is the Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River, that the applicant is the Davenport Companies of 20 Main Street, South Yarmouth, Mass. The property location is an unnumbered lot on the south side of Route 6A between Comset Circle and Outward Reach, and across the street from Hockanum Road, Assessor's Map 125, Parcel 39. It is a 15.3 acre lot in a zoning district R40 residential. The applicant is seeking approval for a 14 lot single family cluster subdivision plan entitled Definitive Subdivision Plan of Land for the proposed single family cluster development at Lot 2, Route 6A, Yarmouth Port, Mass. For the Davenport Companies, with waivers and a special permit for a 14 lot single family cluster subdivision under the provisions of the Yarmouth zoning bylaw section 402. In our package, you will see that Mr. Paul Tardif has provided to us an agreement for extension, requesting a continuance of this hearing to our September 7th, 2022 meeting. I understand Mr. Tardif is joining us here this evening. Would you care to chime in here, Mr. Tardif?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Yeah, we are going to ask for another continuance, and I'm sorry to do that. It's not our goal to delay this thing or belabor it, but we are making great progress on a new plan. I can tell you by representation that I did receive a draft of that plan today, and that there is an additional site visit by our engineers that will occur this week, looking at new sight lines for safety purposes, and we should be able to put calculations together for a new plan. So I'm very optimistic by the September 7th meeting that we would probably be withdrawing this without prejudice and then proceeding with a new plan at that time. So I think this is the last one. I can tell you that.
Thank you so much for that update, Paul. We appreciate that. Any questions or comments from board members?
No.
Hearing none, seeing none, may I have a motion to continue the hearing on hearings on definitive subdivision plan number 2936A and special permit number 116 to our September 7th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
Any discussion? We need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Vote. I'll do this by roll call again. Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Jim Saban,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Tarter, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the 7th of September.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Next on our agenda are meeting minutes. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of our July 6th, 2022 meeting?
So moved. Second.
Again, roll call. Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Jim Saban,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Passes unanimously. Committee updates. Kathy, I'm not sure where on the agenda you'd like to include your.
Probably in staff updates.
Sure. Okay. So let's go through committee updates. Any committee updates from members?
Just briefly on the housing front, we've got Mary Wagon is deemed it to be Brad Goodwin show up at town hall almost every day. So I want to thank her for that. It's always great to see the people and the leaders of the town. We have an application out, an RFP for $520,000 for the housing trust. We had 2 people come back with some very nice plans, one for the Bornstein property across the street and the other one for a chunk of land adjacent to the Hampton Inn. And we'll see where that progresses from the votes.
Thank you, Brad.
Yes.
Any other committee updates? I have 2. I attended on July 13th, the Community Preservation Committee, and we had a review of an appointment to the Affordable Housing Trust. One of the members needed to be appointed. There was a resignation from the committee. There were several project updates that we went through. And then there were votes on extensions of 2 contracts with regard to the what's called the 1750 house, which is the parcel in between our 2 pocket parks, right? Isn't that the
It's on
Yankee
east-
Village?
It's on the east side of
Yeah,
Yankee
yeah.
Village. Yep.
There was a couple of legal agreements where we needed to extend the term on the agreements that covered them, in addition to an affordable housing feasibility study where we agreed to provide some financing. So that was on July 13th. And then on July 18th, I attended the Water Resources Advisory Committee meeting where we received an update from CDM Smith on our wastewater treatment project. In addition, we had a representative, Rick Bishop, from the Bass River, Friends of Bass River group, giving us an update on some new additional sampling that they've gone through on the upper parts of the river near the bicycle Cape Cod Rail Trail.
Battery.
There were some water samples and some photographs of some building algae, obviously as a result of nitrogen. So Rick Bishop was kind enough to give us an update on that. As a result of that meeting, we also scheduled on July 28th a site visit to 2 facilities, in water resource recovery facilities, one in Cohasset and one in Kingston. And I joined in on those site visits. The Cohasset plant was a very small one, but we could see it in action. And then on the way back down here, we visited the Kingston plant, which is a plant that CDM Smith is very familiar with. And we went through a site visit there to see what the water resources recovery facility might look like for us. It was interesting because there are 2 tanks that are in development now that are in use, and then there are 2 brand new ones that are under construction. So we could see kind of what an actual water resources recovery facility looks like without any content, which makes it a bit more visible, as you can imagine. And I'd like to report that from my perspective, the smell was practically non-existent. I was actually surprised by that because these plants are treated. So it was important. I think 5 members of the Water Resources Advisory Committee attended these 2 site visits. So it was a good opportunity for us to spend some time together and to see these plants in action. And CDM Smith is, at our next meeting, will be making some recommendations on the kind of plant that they might recommend for us. We did take a consensus vote, if you will, to refer to the plant on Buck Island as a water resources recovery facility, WWRF. So we've locked in on an acronym, at least from the RAC committee. So those are my updates on those 2 committees that I'm a member of. Next on our agenda,
I don't know
Yes,
whether
Kathy.
Susan wanted to give an update. We did have a meeting for the DISAC on the 18th.
Why don't you just include it when you do your?
Okay, perfect.
okay.
And then just because Chris isn't here, the Design Review Committee did meet yesterday for an 11-bay contractor building at, I guess it was the former Cape Cod 5 offices on Mid-Tech Drive near the very end on the right before you get to the cul-de-sac. So that's something that's going to be moving to site plan review, and then we'll probably need some relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay. Any board member items that we need to, yes, Will?
I just had a quick question on the status of finding a 7th member of our board.
I have heard nothing as of yet.
I have heard nothing as well. I can send another email to see if they're making any particular progress. I don't know if any of you know of anyone who might be interested in the planning board, and they could submit a talent bank form on the town website. That would be good as well.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Correspondence, Kathy has passed along some correspondence to us, and staff updates. Kathy's going to give us a presentation on a couple of items that are active right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy.
Try to be relatively brief, but a couple of projects have gone before presentations before the Board of Selectmen fairly recently, and I thought maybe I'd give you guys a brief overview, and maybe the public can also have another opportunity to see some of the wonderful pictures. One of the first projects here is the park restoration project, which really encompasses the Chasebrook Park, the former Yankee Village, and the Mill Creek Park on Route 28 in West Yarmouth. This was an opportunity where we had 2 existing parks on either end with an older motel in the center. We were able to purchase it. It was demolished, and our concept is to really create a single cohesive waterfront park in this particular area, and it will help, with water quality and with also with resiliency, because we're removing the motel and the septic systems and all of those. The town has hired Crawford Land Management to develop this master plan, which is what was presented to the Board of Selectmen. It has some multiple goals. One of them is to be sure that we are providing beautiful vista views. There's some different invasive species that are there, that like Phragmites along the south side that are really impacting the views of Mill Creek. We also want to improve accessibility because there's some older pathways that are not fully accessible. They have roots in them, and replacing those. There's been over time a lot of encroachment of invasive species that have really had a negative impact on the park, as well as the plantings of some non-native plantings from the original parks that we want to remove, and really all restoring that with native plantings, really to minimize maintenance and also to improve the habitat and overall resiliency. So from left to right is Chasebrook in the center with kind of open area. It would be the new park where the former Yankee Village is, and on the right, you can show you a little bit of a blow up. On the left is Chase Brook Park, to the left of Chase Brook Creek. And basically, there's already parking there with an access, and that's going to stay. And there's a bunch of picnic tables and benches, but we're going to be replacing all of the walkways with a stabilized aggregate, which is not as right now it's impervious asphalt. And we're also going to be removing, again, the non-native white poplar trees, and there's a bunch of invasive species like Japanese knotweed and bittersweet, and there's also some spotted knapweed. I'm not an expert on this, but those are the identified invasives. And then really reestablishing the native plant community and creating different type of seeded areas. The main thing also is there's an existing overlook down there. We're going to do some vista management and some pruning. There's some cedar trees that are really blocking the vista down there. On Yankee Village to the right of the brook is gonna-
Kathy,
go ahead.
excuse me for
Sure.
interrupting. On that, is the overlook all the way at the bottom there?
Correct.
Okay.
It's right down here.
Down
way at
here,
the bottom.
okay, all right. So there is a path you can take.
Right now, there's an existing path. It's very overgrown. It's kind of bumpy. And then there's this view at the end is kind of blocked with some cedar trees and that type of thing. So
Okay.
really trying to take care of all of that. And then creating the new park for Yankee Village. Right now, when they removed the buildings, they kind of just stabilized it with bark mulch. That's going to be an area where it's going to be a really nice open meadow, kind of a pollinator meadow, which is going to be low maintenance. Again, all along the perimeter, really along the waterways, have a lot of invasives that need to be taken care of, especially Phragmites on the south side that are really blocking the view. Again, we'd have new pathways that would allow people to walk through and new benches and different seating areas. We're also looking at having a pedestrian bridge that will connect the two parks. It really will help maintain that connectivity between the parks, because when we were there visiting, we went up and it's very loud and noisy to go along the sidewalk to get to Chase Brook. So it would really make Chase Brook Park a connected part of the overall waterfront park. And then the next one on the right is the Mill Creek, and it's going to have very similar. It's an older park. It's going to be the invasives management, new trails. There's also an existing overlook there that will be maintained, and then establishing a bunch of different low maintenance open seed areas for that. So this is just kind of showing you the different amenities. You can see there on the upper left-hand side. That's kind of what the trails look like right now with the bumps on them. And kind of giving you some pictures of the different type of native plant species that we'll be putting up, the different opportunities for interpretive signage. The Board of Selectmen did decide to call the entire park the Chase Brook Park, versus trying to have multiple different parks, and then having different types of seating areas. And they've been discussing having different type of stone benches, or using the stone actually at the former drive-in site, and bringing it over and having that. As with any project that has a lot of wetland resources on it, there's a lot of permitting associated with it, especially adding in the pedestrian bridge. So there's wetlands permits, stormwater permits. We need to do environmental notification form, erosion control. The big one is the Chapter 91 waterway license, and also Army Corps, but the waterway license can take 9 to 12 months to get, and that's required for the pedestrian bridge because it's going over a waterway. So that's something that's really is going to impact the schedule, as well as there's certain time of year restrictions on when you can remove invasives. For example, the knotweed and the Phragmites, they need to be when they're kind of like not when they're fully bloomed, but just before they go dormant, so that they're big and thick. I guess you inject the knotweed with kind of something that kills the plant. And then of course, everyone knows with Phragmites, you kind of lump them, slice them off, and then you treat the stalks. And those will be a multi-year invasive species restoration, because unfortunately you can't do it in one shot. It takes multiple years. The actual project costs and funding for the project, these are somewhat older estimates. And I think as we're finding on the Riverwalk Park, costs are going up. So this is part of the next phase of the project is going to be to hire a single consultant team to take the great concept restoration plans that were developed by Crawford Land Management, and to actually turning those into biddable plans, as well as designing of the pedestrian bridge. Right now, there's really, other than having an approximate location, there's no real design that has been done for that. So as part of that, we'll have to take another look at the costs and different funding sources for the project. And then taking a look at the next steps with regard to timeline. This is a fairly aggressive timeline. because as what I said, we have met with Jen Crawford and talked to her about the different time of year restrictions. So we really would needed to have started and done the invasives kind of this fall, but we're not ready. So unfortunately, it may delay everything, but I think by hiring a single consultant, getting it all done, all permitted all at once, and then going out to bid all at once will actually allow for the project to move forward versus trying to do it too much piecemeal. So that's really the end of the slideshow on that project. I don't know if anyone had any questions or you wanted me to go on to the Riverwalk Park.
Any questions or comments? That's nice to see that this is moving along, Kathy. I know it's, another one of your projects, your many
Kelly
projects.
Grant did all of the heavy lifting so far in the
Really? Yeah.
conservation. So it was unfortunate when she left. So we're just trying to pick up all the great work that she had done it and then keep pushing it forward.
Yeah, well, the plans look great. That'll be just a wonderful, it'll be so much better once it gets going, but it's long-term, sounds like,
But we'll have it for
forever.
generations.
So it takes a year or two.
Yes,
We'll have
thank
it
you.
forever.
So
There you go.
it's worth
There
the
you
wait.
go. Absolutely.
I
Thank
like
you.
that attitude. Thank you. So I don't know if anyone else.
Anyone else, any questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
And then just really briefly, let me just pull up. So the other big project that we're working on, and Susan and Jim are intimately familiar with this project, is the Riverwalk Park Boardwalk and Event Space at the former drive-in site at 669 Route 28. That's been a kind of a long-term project that we've been working on with the drive-in site utilization committee. Just kind of give you a brief overview of kind of, this is what the overall layout of the park looks like. And starting from right and kind of going to the left. At the very beginning, you'll see that the number one is we have to fit in a municipal pump station. So we're trying to coordinate with CDM in order to fit that in. It's a very tight area. We don't have a lot of frontage. We need to have our entrance, and there's also an isolated wetland. So a little tricky business there at the entrance that we're working on. Number two is the main entrance. You can see that there's like.
I'm sorry, Kathy, can you point out number one?
See the, with the,
Okay.
And then number two is at the entrance. We have a small median island to try and make it an attractive entrance with one lane coming in and then two lanes going out with the left and a right-hand turn. We also have up over here, we're coordinating with Mass DOT for one of those flashing beacon crosswalks. They've already have them proposed, and we're going to work with them with regard to the location. Number three is like we have a pathway, an 8-foot wide shared use pathway that's being brought all the way in and kind of going around. So it allows for an opportunity for people to bike or to learn how to ride their bike and gain access to the site. In addition, on the bottom side of the main entrance, we have this flexible third lane made out of paved, like a turf pavers that would allow for an event. You can have one lane coming in and two lanes going out, or two lanes coming in and one lane going out to facilitate those types of things. Number four is all the different walkways that we have down along the pond or the river. We tried to also have another maybe smaller walkway a little bit closer to give better views down the river. We also have about 88 parking spaces here that are going to be made out of porous pavement. We have a turnaround here as well as a turnaround up there. And in between, we have what we've been calling these little rooms that are available for different activities within the area. Here we were looking at having different types of maybe artist shanties or a little village there. We have been meeting. We met this morning with a lovely woman who runs the program over in Barnstable. She gave us a lot of great ideas, working with Eric Gali from Beta, who's our consultant. Been very, very wonderful to work with about, maybe we want to start looking at this area to for the artist shanties, to kind of engage this whole area and have it be something where there's more activity going on in that particular area. So we're continuing to pursue things along those lines. And a couple items that we'll look in more detail. Number 7 here, that's the restroom facilities. Number 8 is where we have our natural playscape area for the kids. 9 is where we're going to have a kayak launch with a kiosk and places for stacking of kayaks. And the big open area here is really our open event space that we're looking at. So the restroom, we had to deal again with a lot of wetland resources. We're in the floodplain, so we tried to kind of design it so that we're meeting floodplain requirements, but also not having something that's sticking out and doesn't blend in with the area. So we ended up doing a combination of raising the grade to about elevation 11 and then doing some flood proofing on the building to elevation 14, which is, or 13, 14, which is what the base flood elevation is on that area. So we will have to have some floodgates and that type of thing for this facility, but it's something that can be dry flood proofed. So we also wanted to be sure that we could, if we put it up too high, it becomes very difficult to get handicap accessibility and end up with all these tons of ramps. So what we were able to do by doing the combination of raising the grade and then dry flood proofing is we have a walkway here that would be handicap accessible to allow people. But then there's also stairs to come this way, which is where the main end, the parking is, and then also having stairs down to the event area as well. And over on the right here is just giving you a brief floor plan for the men's room and the ladies' room, mechanical storage area, and then also having not really having a full idea of what we might be doing here long term. We wanted to have some flexible office space, and we're not really sure what that might be. It might be for performers or different types of things depending on what's going on. We tried to come up with some architecture that kind of blended in and had a Cape Cod feel to it. We really tried to use the Packet Landing Pavilion as a little bit of a guide, with the hip roof and the cupola at the top. So it's just kind of giving you a general idea of what the building would look like. This is the playscape area, and you can kind of see on the left where the blue tube is, like a little tube for kids to run through. These are a bunch of different timber planks that kids can walk on. There's a little slide and different picnic areas, and you kind of see these are just kind of some examples with this. Jim Saban and I went to the Recreation Commission, kind of presented to them. They really liked it, but they were also, prior to our meeting, they were presenting the Sandy Pond Recreation, and they had this really cool pirate ship. So what we're trying to do is see if we can't create the space. So if we can afford a pirate ship in the future, we would have the space. Otherwise, we could have the different timber balance beams and that type of thing. This just kind of gives you a little.
Oh, my goodness.
Kind of being the pirate smile, kind of thinking along those lines, it might be nice. And then adding some type of swing structure as well. So one of the other big things here is having some type of kayak launch, and we've really picked a spot where the river bulbs out, so people have a chance to get in the river, get orientated before they move directly into the river. We also had a bunch of soundings done to kind of figure out what the depths were there, so we had proper elevations. There is some marsh along the fringe. It's very thin. We picked the spot where we were impacting the least amount, but we're going up and over, so you can see that we actually have in that section here, we have a boardwalk section that goes up and over, the little section of salt marsh here, and then we have gangplanks that bring you down. This gangplank's a little bit bigger than this one, so they could lift them up if they wanted to in the winter time and have them stored for the winter. This is kind of giving you an idea of these zero access types of launches that we're looking at for the kayak launch.
The soundings on the depths there, Kathy, what did they come out as? Do you recall? I can't see them from here.
I think it's like 4 or 5.
Oh, okay.
There ended up being a natural spot right here.
Wow.
You can kind of see some of the things, and this is more of where the main route is. So we kind of lucked out.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
weren't sure what we were going to find.
Yeah, no, that's a good depth.
But they went out with DNR. They took the harbor master boat out, and they did a
Yeah.
bunch of soundings. So it was very helpful.
Thank you.
Carl Von Hoen, the former DNR director, was very helpful, as well as Bill Benetti, on designing and coming up with the location and everything for the kayak launch. So this is kind of representing, giving you a general idea of the event space. And again, as we're saying, that we have this flexible lane, so people can come in to an event. They can kind of veer off here. This is the general parking, and then you can have your event space in this particular area. Whether you're taking tickets in this particular location or people are just coming in and parking and tickets come here, have a lot of flexibility to allow people to have different types of events. This is just a blow up of that particular area. What you're seeing here is an actual layout for some type of performance event where you would have a temporary stage at one end. But this whole area, that you could configure it any particular way. But this seemed to be the highest use or the most concern with regard to the site because of the sounds that could come
Mhm.
from some type of performance. So we did have a sound study done, and they did come up with the best orientation to have least impacts on the neighbors. I know the Niagara Lane area I'm sorry if I'm talking away from that. We're concerned about noise during when we did have the COVID season 2020, and there was a lot of events there. So you'll see that it's directed towards Route 28. They've also set a limit of decibel level of about 90 decibels, 100 feet from the stage. This square box that you see here in front of the temporary stage is about a 200 by 200 area. About 3,000 people can stand there. What you see around these little boxes of yellow, they could be vendors, they could be food trucks. They all they're going to have water and electricity hookup. We did meet with an event sponsor recently and got some really great information with regard to the type of power loads that are necessary for the stage, and then kind of what type of room you need behind the stage for all of the stuff that they have going on. I think we need a little bit more room behind the stage based on some of the input that we have gotten from them. We will have Wi-Fi available in the restroom area, as well as cameras on the restroom that will be going in this direction as well as going in this direction. We're also looking at maybe having cameras somewhere either at the upweller or down here so that people at DNR can kind of look up and down the river, keep an eye on things on the river itself. And so once you come past the Riverwalk Park here and come into the woods here, we have our wonderful, amazing elevated boardwalk here. So there was, again, a lot of things that went into laying this out, and you can kind of see it's got some little jiggies and jogs in it, and there's environmental reasons for that. We wanted to keep away from the existing marsh pan that's here. We also wanted to be respectful of the neighbors here on the west side, and we originally were coming out more like this, and we ended up coming in closer. Couldn't get any further away because we had this restriction here. We also tried to be respectful of people on the other side of Parker's River. Instead of bringing it up and over here, we kind of kept it tucked in. There's also little tufts of marsh that we wanted to go around, and there's also some larger elevated areas with trees on it that were really good, identified as really good places for migratory birds to perch, and they didn't really want us to be disturbing those. So that was one of the things that kind of moved things around. We're looking at a 6-foot wide boardwalk. I think we all know that the Bass Hole boardwalk's a little too narrow, so we're really hoping to keep it with the 6 feet. But when you start going over marshlands and you have something 6 foot wide, they like you to have at least a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning if you're 6 foot wide, they want you to be 6 foot above the marsh for sunlight. So what we're proposing is in the orientations that are going left and right here, kind of north and south, that it would be a 1-to-1 ratio, so 6 feet above the marsh. But in the areas where it's kind of up and down on the page here, or east-west, we have less sunlight penetrating underneath. We went with 1 to 1.25. And we also have different areas here, number 5s, that are showing the overlooks, which would be a slightly wider area where people could go off and kind of sit. Maybe would not necessarily sit, but look at the marsh. Might also have some areas on the other side here where people could have little benches where they could sit. And we could also have some interpretive signage and that type of thing to identify different types of wildlife as well as the marshlands themselves. This is just giving you some concepts here. It's kind of on the right showing you the overlook. We needed to keep it fairly narrow because we never want to be more than 1-to-1. So as you make it wider, then it impacts the height above the marsh. And we didn't want to have a lot of ups and downs. We wanted to go up at 5%, have the elevated, and then go back down. On the lower left, we're looking at some vertical wood railings, which I think gives a little bit more line of sight through versus the wider planks that are horizontal. And then maybe even some areas using the cable railings that you can really see through, but using them where you get the best bang for your buck with regards to the views. The last big question, and this is the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee meeting that we went to on July 18th, where I couldn't go to the RAC meeting, was to have Beta tell us about this analysis that they had done with regard to the different types of support systems that you could use on a boardwalk. They had really had a lot of high hopes for composite piling, but by the time they did the different structural calculations, and because of the height we are above the marsh, they're very bendy. And what they found was that in order to have not have too much deflection or bending going on the actual structure itself, that it needed to be bigger and wider diameter than they had originally thought. So that had more impacts on the marsh. So the engineers really did a great evaluation, very detailed on constructability, longevity, the maintenance, different cost and environmental impacts. And ultimately, they ended up recommending to the dissect that we go with the upper left here, which is the helicals. They have a smaller permanent and a smaller temporary impact on the marsh. And the dissect really kind of was swayed by, they felt that this was more readily permittable than something that had more impacts on the marsh. And there was also something that we had presented and seemed fairly favorable from the Conservation Commission as well as other regulatory agencies. So that was the big last, I think, decision point that we've been looking at. And again, this one's full of resource areas that we need to there's a lot of regulatory requirements. Beta's very, very familiar with them and has been working within those requirements. But there's quite a few permits that they're working on. Now that we have the boardwalk done, I think they can finalize their applications that they started. Again, project costs and funding. Originally, the project was 7.7 million, and we had acquired 6 million, a large chunk through CPA, Land Water Conservation Fund, and a Seaport grant. But I think, as we all know, there's going to be impacts to the project costs. They're up now that they know the boardwalk. They're going to finish the cost estimate, and it'll probably be closer to $8.5–9 million. So we're going to need to start looking for some additional funding. And we do have some leads on some kayak launch funding from the state, as well as maybe an underutilized property grant that might be available from the state, as well as looking at potentially asking CPA for more funding. And then the last thing is kind of where we are in the scheduling. The whole idea is that we're hoping to have everything permitted and out to bid so that we can start construction after Labor Day of next year. So that will allow the site to be used for next summer for interim events, but likely the following summer, it might be a little iffy as to whether the site will be available or most likely we're going to want to let the lawn have its time that it needs to become fully established beforehand. So if all things go well, hopefully next fall we'll be starting construction. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Any comments or questions from board members?
Looked it, excuse me, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. It looked good. It's a long way from a marina.
Sorry, Brad.
I still want those 8 years back, but that's okay. Nice job to the whole committee, and it'll be nice to see. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's looking really good. Thank you to the committee, especially our members, Jim and Susan. This is looking really good. It looks great.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Saban.
I'm not sure how to raise my hand, but I just want to thank Kathy for that outstanding presentation. It shows the amount of time and effort she put into it, that she really got a hold of where we're at. And like everything else, it's a work in progress, but thank you, Kathy, for an excellent presentation.
Thank you for chairing the dissect so well. And I can't say enough about Beta. They're, consultants, sometimes it's hit or miss, but they've been just wonderful to work with. I meet weekly with Eric to kind of keep everything on track. So they do a great job, and they provided all of those wonderful graphics. So they've been great to work with.
Oh, that's good to hear. Okay, great. Thank you, Kathy. On to our next meetings. For the August 17th meeting, what might we have on the agenda for that? Any that you know of
I know
now?
of no business items.
As of now. Okay, so may not have a need for a meeting.
And
Okay.
I know right now I can't be here
On the 17th. Okay, thank you, Susan. But we will be meeting on the 7th for the continuation of the hearings on the Davenport development. Anything else from committee members?
I'm sorry, I did
Sure.
have one more update, is they did set the date for the special town meeting for the fall. It's later than usual. It is November 15th.
I see they also attached a calendar there as to when things are due in advance.
Yes. Yep.
And I noticed that should we have any zoning articles. Those would be due October 18th.
Yes.
Did I
If-
read that right, Kath?
Yeah, correct. And I guess if it's okay with you guys, I'm gonna let the town administrators know, office know that we do not have any zoning amendments for this fall.
I'm okay with that. Any comment from members? Okay, so I think we can make that advisement. Thank you, Kathy. And with that, it has, seeing no other business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Let's do a roll call again. Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
aye.
Jim Saban. He's mute, but I know he's here. And Joanne Crowley.
Aye, aye and goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a month.
Thank you.
Good.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Oh, goodness.